and let's get inventive, millennials.
Okay, boomer.
Okay, boomer.
Can we end on that?
Welcome back to the Gooner Fanzine TV podcast. It's the international break, but because it's Arsenal, there's still loads to talk about. Joined by the usual panel you know and love, Serge, Layth, Grumpy Glen and Dan, the man, Mountney. First off, one of the big talking points in Arsenal is Ian Wright has gone into the jungle. Layth, I know you thoroughly enjoyed it last night.
Honestly,
give us the lowdown.
I love Ian Wright. I love him a bit. Probably saw about 90% of his games for Arsenal, home and away and all across Europe. I've interviewed him as well. He's a brilliant bloke. I just absolutely love him. And my guilty pleasure is watching I'm a Celebrity, and he was absolutely fantastic on it. He was, I don't know if you watch it, like any of you that have seen it, but he basically got to walk on his plank in a place called Surfers Paradise in Australia. I've been there. It's a bit like Blackpool in Australia, basically, with like tall buildings, a bit of sun. But it was a really tall building. He's got to walk out with his sort of partner from EastEnders, and it was just brilliant. And I love Wright a bit. And what was that line about? There weren't too many Arsenal players on international duty. It was Ian Wright and Alex Scott, basically. Yeah. But Ian Wright's a legend. We all want him to win. Lee Dixon tweeted out, just support of Ian Wright, basically. And really.
You can imagine all of his Arsenal teammates from the past just watching that on. There was a video of Lee Dixon going mental, wasn't there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's a legend. Love him a bit. So hopefully he'll do well for himself and obviously for the Arsenal as well.
How do you think he's going to do, boys?
Well, he's going to win it, of course.
He's going to be the king of the jungle, definitely.
Do you know what? My girlfriend watches it quite a lot, and I said to her...
Don't lie, you watch it as well, didn't you?
Well, obviously not, no. I said to her, you've got to cheer on Ian Wright. She was like, no, I don't know who Ian Wright is. And I was like, right, we're on the ropes here. We're on the ropes here. You're not, if you don't know who he is and you're not cheering him on, we're on the ropes here. We're having problems.
I just like the Spurs fans don't vote against him. Tactical voting. We approach a general election.
Trust you put it down on that.
He said he's got fear of snakes, hasn't he? I mean, he doesn't like the snakes. I saw quite a funny clip on social media. I don't know what show it was from, but there's like a guy trying to catch this snake, and Ian Wright standing behind him like cowering, shaking.
Yeah, in the outback.
That was it. Yeah. I don't know how he's going to do with the snakes and the bush chucker trials, but it's going to be be quite funny to watch either way. We know he's quite an entertaining guy. I think he'll win it. I fancy him to go all the way.
He's his favourite, so
there you go then.
Yeah.
He's a very entertaining bloke. He's very open. What was your impression from interviewing him? Obviously, that's an interview I'd love to do. Obviously.
Yeah, like I say, I mean, it was at the '89 film premiere at the Odeon Holloway Road, and he was just brilliant. He was loving it. Like, all the old boys were there, and that was obviously my vintage. I used to watch him every week, basically, and it was just like the best dream ever to be there and to actually chat to him. He was bouncing off the walls. He was absolutely fantastic, and what you see is what you get with Ian Wright, and he's an absolute legend. And for me, he was probably one of the best forwards in Arsenal history as well. So there's just so many reasons why you've got to vote for Ian Wright. But, I love him.
Glenn, I was going to say, what are your memories of Wrighty as a player?
Well, it was just stunning, wasn't he? He encapsulated the club. He bridged that divide between the fans and the club. He was it was like one of you being out there.
But with talent, basically.
With talent, yeah.
I imagine
Arsenal's got talent. I was just my friend texted me this morning. He lives down in the Sussex area. And it really is local journalism. I think it's the Argus down there. He said, "You'll like this."
Good chat with the
He
Argus,
said, "Former Brighton trialist Ian Wright starts."
Love it.
Starts in I'm a Celebrity.
What would Palace fans say about that?
Clinging onto some sort of recognition.
Oh, the SEO was popping off.
I've got quite a good non-Arsenal related story along the same lines. So I went to uni in Surrey, and we used to do stories about Oxshott Sandy Murray, because he used to live in Oxshott in Surrey. And then literally the loosest link ever along the same lines. But Brighton trialist is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Oxshott lads wins Wimbledon, basically. Yeah.
The kid you've never heard of has won Wimbledon.
Who are his other, on I'm a Celebrity, who are the other candidates for the win?
There was a bit of an Arsenal link, really, because it's, Roman
Kemp.
Obviously the Spaniard and Ballaway.
Let's
hope not.
He's run out of money.
That'd be something, wouldn't it? But so there's a bit of an Arsenal link there, and it's. I'm trying to think. They're all Z-list celebrities, basically. There's a couple of. They seem really nice. No, I didn't. I was like going, who's this? But I'm sure they're lovely people and wish them all well. But I couldn't.
Let's talk football. That might be a good idea.
Let's talk some football. Obviously, January transfer window coming up. Arsenal, I think there's been a little bit of talk that they're not going to do much business, which obviously, you know, there needs to be some sort of change, whether it's Emery or some business. Xhaka could be leaving. Obviously, Emery said sort of what was his quote on whether he's going to play again? He doesn't know if he's going to play again. Very unlikely. Newcastle have gone in for him, haven't they? What do you think about him leaving?
I mean, after what happened at the Palace game, I think it's probably the best decision.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine he'll get the fans back on side when he goes back on the pitch.
No.
And not that he'll make any decisive decisions on the pitch in himself to actually improve the quality.
Yeah.
So
Do you think he would get just resoundingly booed by the whole stadium when he
I
touched the ball?
There will definitely be resentment towards him on
Yeah.
the pitch because of his. And also, his apology afterwards wasn't really an apology. It was more about a structured agreement as to why we were wrong.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and everyone's saying we were
Yeah.
booing him, but we're only booing him because it took him so long to get off. It was all very misconstrued in the press. But I think if he goes in January, you know, hopefully we can get some money out of the deal because he wasn't the cheapest player at the time. So I mean, Newcastle could do worse than Xhaka.
Yeah. I mean, do you think he'll thrive there?
I mean, it depends. I mean, just literally today, is it Lascelles? He got injured. The captain's injured.
Yeah.
I know he's a different position and stuff, but he's out to January. So it'd be interesting to see if they're looking for
captain,
Xhaka for his
you-
captaincy qualities
Are
as
you
well.
implying
but-
Xhaka could be a captain?
Where's one of
Captain
five captains?
material.
We're going to have to
Was.
start calling him Unai.
Yeah. But the talk of Newcastle being in for that was it Sam Ratter, Genk, who scored against Liverpool in the Champions
Samatta,
League.
yeah,
Samatta,
centre
sorry,
forward,
yeah.
yeah.
And he was like 10, 12 million or whatever. So depends how much Newcastle got for their transfer budget. I mean, there's talk of sort of been going on loan, like we were saying before.
There's kind of two different there's
or
two
swap,
different
yeah.
options that have been talked about. So one of them was a loan deal where Newcastle will have to pay a significant portion of his wages. From what I was reading, Steve Bruce is quite confident that the club will get it done because they've got Andy Carroll over the line. I don't see how that links in any way, but I mean they're both probably about similar quality of players. But there was also talk of a swap deal with his former club, Borussia Mönchengladbach, with Dennis Zakaria, another Swiss midfielder, coming to Arsenal in what I understand would be a direct swap.
With no cash adjustment or anything.
Just a direct swap from what I've read and what I've heard. So,
And what did you like about Sakaria then?
I've seen him play a few times. He's, dare I say, and we've said it before with a few players, but he's a bit in the Vieira mould.
That's a big label.
I know. Well, we've said it a
before.
few times, so I may as well add to the list. He's quite tall, strong, physical holding midfielder. He's happy to bring the ball out at his feet. Likes to get the tackle. Really physical player. So he's someone that I think would improve Arsenal in terms of
Sounds like
having.
you're just describing Xhaka again.
I've not said the word sideways, sir.
But the thing is, Newcastle on a bit of a run of form at the moment, aren't they? Beating West
They
Ham
are, yeah.
and Bournemouth as well. So it's like, you know, I think they're
Stevie Bruce has got it going.
Bruce.
back-to-back wins. It's
He's
like, do they
out,
actually need Xhaka? Would Xhaka stall their progress, basically?
Back-to-back
He's a
wins.
good squad player.
I wish we could
Yeah,
get
yeah.
back-to-back
I mean,
wins.
I've even got Sam Maxime Paris in my fantasy football team, so
Yeah,
I've
done
got
well
faith in
that way.
Newcastle. Yeah.
Sorry, who did you just say?
Sam Maxime Paris.
Right, we've had I'm a celebrity in fantasy football.
Let's get back
No,
to
I
the
haven't
Arsenal.
Where's Skinner and Badil?
They're certainly not here anyway.
But if we look back on Xhaka's time at Arsenal, I mean, were there any high points before we go on to the low
I remember
points?
going up to Nottingham Forest in an
some
early League
screamers.
Cup game the first
we mentioned
season.
that,
It
didn't
was
we?
a League
Yeah,
Cup
Arsenal won
game.
4-0, and it was a really cracking atmosphere at Nottingham Forest's ground, Trent Bridge. That's a cricket, I can't even think.
Trent
The
City
I've
ground.
been there for 30 years, I can't remember the City ground, obviously. There was about 4,000 or 5,000 Arsenal there, packed out ground, 30,000. And I remember Xhaka, he scored an absolute worldie from about 30 yards.
You can do that.
And that was like one of the early goals, and Arsenal
Perez,
silenced the crowds.
Lucas
Perez got a couple that night,
Yeah.
yeah. And basically, Arsenal won 4-0. It was really quite a decent performance on what could have been a tricky night, basically. I remember thinking, Xhaka, he could be all right, this lad. And I remember we played Hull a couple of weeks after that, and that was another tricky game up at Hull. And I think we won 4-1, and Xhaka got another long-range goal.
He's done it a few times, hasn't he, where he scored from range, but you've got to look at how many times he's tried it, and it's not.
Yeah, but that
it's not
first
come
season,
off.
those early games, he was shooting
He
all the
showed
time.
promise, didn't he? But since
Yeah.
then, I think we said this on the podcast the other week, but I can't remember a performance where he stood out and I've gone, that was an 8 out of 10, that was a 7.5 out of 10.
He's not
He's
built
just
to be
always.
He's not built to be a standout player though. He's built to be just
Yeah,
a squad player.
okay, you say that, but there's players, people like N'Golo Kante, obviously a very different style of player, who don't necessarily stand out to you. But Xhaka just never does anything of note for me. We've all watched him a lot of times. I mean, I just can't think of a performance where he's really stood out as an 8 or a 7.5 or a 9 or a 10.
And obviously, we're going back to that Palace game, which is the whole point of his, questionable future at Arsenal. He was an absolute disgrace that day for me.
Shocking.
You would always. I've never booed an Arsenal player in 40 years, and I didn't boo him that day. We were sat together. We were just literally sat there in sort of shock about what was unfolding. Basically, never booed him. And people saying, non-Arsenal fans were saying, "Oh, yeah, Arsenal fans are booing him." Emery took him off. He made the decision to take him off. There was no booing. Xhaka basically stood there, got a bit stroppy, took the armband off, and then he was just being really slow about going.
Yeah.
And that is when the jeers started happening. It wasn't Arsenal fans boo their own player.
do you
It was
see
like, get off the pitch because you've got to get off the pitch,
It was
basically.
2-2 at that point, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And we were 2-0 up, and obviously they pulled it back to 2-1. We needed to win. The time was running out. Just get off the pitch.
I think it was on the
jeers
hour
come from.
mark, so you've got half an hour left at that point. As the leader, you should say, we're half an hour is obviously a fairly long time, but not in football. It's not a long time for me.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you should be running or you should be sprinting off the pitch.
Yeah, and then he was like cupping his ears, going, "Oh yeah,
Especially if you're a club captain, you should respect the quality
absolutely."
of the team.
And then he didn't shake Saka's hand. 17, 18-year-old Saka, he was looking up to his captain, and then he just snubbed Emery's sort of handshake as well, and then
dropped
ripped
the
his
shirt.
shirt. We can't confirm whether he actually threw the shirt on the ground, but he certainly ripped the shirt off. And for me, that's not good enough. Tony Adams never did that.
He dropped it, didn't he? Which is
We did. I don't know if we say
I think he dropped it.
Yeah,
I think it was more of a drop than
Let's
a
give him the
throw.
benefit of the doubt, but the fact was he ripped the shirt off. Tony Adams never ripped the shirt off in 20 years.
It was just so
Absolutely.
many points of
Yeah.
disrespect, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
And then after the game,
Absolutely.
changing his social media profiles to get rid of Arsenal references, to change his profile picture to Swiss, it shows he wants out. If there's someone coming to shoot him in January, then I think it's a done deal.
So the only thing I'd say about that is, I mean, we draw a lot from social media in modern football, but I think we said this probably last week or the week before, there is a big kind of management team behind every single player at that level. So whether that was a decision he took,
But either way, he could say no. He doesn't have to say, yeah, you do what. He's the Arsenal captain. Why are you changing your profile?
Do you think...
Not good enough for me.
A point that no one's made is that wasn't the first time in recent weeks that he'd been substituted.
Yeah.
Do you think the original Strop was actually being substituted?
Yeah.
Of course,
He had the arse with Emery. Am I allowed to say arse on this?
Yeah.
He had the ump with Emery. Then that's sort of like, that's why he threw the initial straw.
Yeah.
That's why people started jeering, ironically at him or whatever.
Yeah. Which goes back to Emery as well, because basically, if you're the manager, you make your captain the captain, your on-field leader. Don't hang him out to dry. Whatever you think of Xhaka, why are you subbing him after an hour unless he's injured? It's just not right. You can see where Xhaka's frustration comes from. So obviously it does stand back to the boss, basically. But for me, Xhaka's behaviour was completely unacceptable, and he should never be captain again. And they stripped him of that, and which is fair enough. And for me, if he didn't play again for Arsenal, wouldn't bother me.
I hope he comes back a lot slower than he did walking off the pitch.
We'll be waiting on that.
Which was very slow.
Yeah.
Obviously, when he was named captain, that was a big moment in terms of ramping up the dislike from the fans. But when was the obviously as a timeline of when it went from bad to worse for him? When did the pressure start coming on him as a player? Do you think?
A couple of years ago.
Do you think?
When he wasn't putting any decent performances.
But this season it's been particularly bad, hasn't it?
Because
He's Emery's man, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
That's his thing. He is the sort of like epitomises everything about Emery on the pitch. He decided, the manager, that was his man, that was his captain. I know he had a ballot or whatever, but the rumours are he likes sort of bigger players and all that. He's not a fan of Torreira. He likes seeing Xhaka out there. And, I think the fan, he became a vessel for sort of like discontent with the manager. And he wasn't putting in the performance. Let's face it, he's not a very good player. I'm sorry to say that.
Yeah.
He's probably a lovely guy. No personal attacks on him, but as a footballer, I don't think he's worthy to wear the Arsenal shirt, let alone be a captain. That's as much as I can say.
The whole ballot thing just shows a complete lack of leadership from Emery's side for me.
Yeah.
Can you imagine George Graham going, we're going to have a ballot to pick who's captain? He'd say, he's my captain, he's on having. I mean, Arsene Wenger would have been the same.
And you'd expect strong characters to step up, but you don't say, we've got 5 captains, basically. And again, that's a failing from the manager saying that.
5 captains says to me that you've got no leaders, so you've got to have 5 leaders. For me, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Obviously, we look at Arsenal now, and it's not the same as it has been in the past. But throughout Arsenal's history, there's always been great leaders. You go back right from the start. David
Danskin,
Danskin, you go further forward.
Percy Sands before the
Charlie
First World War,
Buchan, Frank
Charlie Buchan in the
McClintock,
20s and 30s.
Tony Adams, Patrick Vieira. You could even argue like Cesc Fabregas.
You
Obviously went on
always miss
strike,
out
but when he
Alan
was
Ball.
playing, he was
You
still.
never mentioned Alan
Alan
Ball.
Ball, sorry, of course,
Alan
Alan Ball, the
With
late
his
great
white
Alan
boots
Ball.
in
Yeah.
the early 70s. Yeah.
There's been so many fantastic captains, but I think just to say, we're having 5 shows that there is no leadership in that squad.
Yeah, and there's no leadership coming from above. By the
Of
fact
course,
you're making exits in the
that
first
as well,
place.
yeah.
There's no other team that has an ombudsman of captains. Like, it's ridiculous.
What does that even mean?
What does that mean?
And on reflection, obviously, in a couple of podcasts ago, we were talking a lot about sort of him being the main reason for Arsenal struggling to play out the back. And on reflection, do we think that was the case?
He's
because
pedestrian and he slows it down.
but they've continued to be that.
Yeah, but I think that's tactics wise rather than Xhaka.
Yeah.
I think everyone in the team has been a victim of the tactics.
Yeah.
You look at I assume
Torreira,
we're gonna come on to Torreira,
Yeah.
I imagine, but
Yeah.
you look at him and he's been forced to play Mesut Ozil's role when Mesut Ozil's playing Torreira's role. What sense does that make?
He's not creative midfielder.
And you've got centre backs. I mean, David Luiz was bought in to play out from the back, and he can't do it. He's probably been Emre's worst signing for me. Obviously, Lichtsteiner wasn't great, but Luiz has been awful. You've got someone like Socrates, who I think is a solid enough defender, but he can't play out from the back. So why try and get him to do it?
Yeah, that Watford game was dreadful for that.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got to credit Socrates in the way he kind of after that game he stood up and he said, "Joe, that was my fault.
It's all right talking a good game. We've had
Yeah,
it
but
so
I mean,
long
that's
with
what I'm
Arsenal
saying.
defenders.
Everyone's a victim of the tactics.
Yeah.
He's playing a system. Literally, no one in that team is
But
comfortable.
Xhaka didn't play against Liverpool, and we looked a lot more creative and fluid. going
did.
What
forward.
in the five?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Did he
5-5.
play?
5-5.
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
He didn't.
It was
No,
after
we
the
didn't.
Palace
That's
game.
what I'm saying. Yeah.
So much we.
Yeah. Honestly.
But
yeah.
Newcastle have still to play at the Emirates, haven't they? I think.
Yeah, we played the first game of the season
Not
at
not
St
sure when the
James's.
game is, but
Thrashed them
can you
1-0
imagine
away.
Xhaka coming back.
Do you know what? When after that game, I thought we might do right. We've won away from home, and
Yeah.
I was wrong. I was wrong.
Well,
He won't get a great reception if he does go to Newcastle. He comes back to the Emirates, will he?
He won't play. He'll be ineligible. It'll be a loan deal.
No, I don't think he will.
Do you think it will? Do you think it will be loan?
I think it'll be a
Yeah.
loan deal.
Yeah.
I don't think Newcastle.
I
Arsenal
really-
are going to want 25-30 million for him, which
Steve
is
Bruce
a
won't pay.
ridiculous. Well, Steve Bruce doesn't have that kind of money, let alone will he pay it. So I think it will be a loan deal, and I don't. Obviously, he'll be ineligible to play, as every kind of player in that situation is. So I don't think we'll see him come back.
Yeah.
I think even if he was eligible, I think Steve Bruce would kind of have the logic to say, do you know, we're going to save you from an onslaught.
Just
Basically.
take a step back from what Dan was saying. You were talking about whether it'd be a hate figure. I don't think it'd be a hate figure at Arsenal. I just think people are just mildly annoyed with him. I don't think he'll come back and he'll get absolutely dog's abuse like someone like say an Ashley Cole.
Right.
Or Sol Campbell when he come back, like when he went to
Nasri.
Spurs, basically, or Nasri, or a lot of other, even Cesc Fabregas. I don't think he
Van
won't
Persie.
be Van Persie. Yeah, absolutely not Van Persie. He won't be at that level because he's not.
There was not enough love for him in the first place.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
why he
I
won't
suppose
get
you've
dog
got-
abuse,
I
because he
suppose that's a
wasn't
really
good
point.
enough.
You've got to care about someone.
Yeah,
You've got to
great
care about
league,
players.
like
the fans
Yeah,
have got to be
yeah.
that linked in.
Yeah, but I think people, if he comes on, if he comes on sub or whatever, people or starts say his name, people will boo him, and then he start the game, and it'll just be like he'll get the bird now and then, sort of thing.
Yeah.
If he goes for a throw in or whatever, and people give him stick, but it won't be hatred.
No.
Because ultimately, what he's done is disgraceful in terms of captaincy, and he doesn't put himself
be
in
honest,
Arsenal
it's
game.
a bit
But
of
it
a
doesn't
farce.
deserve the hatred, basically.
It's a bit of a
And
farce,
no, hear me
really.
out though. And also in terms of social media stuff. And just personal abuse as well. No player ever deserves personal abuse, basically. We've got to say that now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Once you do the personal abuse, the conversation stops, basically.
Yeah.
You can have a constructive criticism, you can have a strong opinion, but no Arsenal fan should ever, abuse Janet Xhaka personally and his family and his wife and all the rest of it.
Janet.
What?
Janet Xhaka.
Janet Xhaka.
I don't know, has he been drinking again? Seriously. But that's the point, basically. Keep it constructive in terms of why you don't like him because of what he did, but don't make it personal, basically. But to go back to your original question, when he comes back to Arsenal, I think he'll get a bit of stick, but he'll ride it and he'll move on. He's a strong character. So.
Hang on, what do you mean when he comes? He's not even left
Yeah,
yet.
yeah.
He would
But-
jump
but
in the gun a
he
bit.
ain't going to play for Arsenal again, sure.
You reckon?
I don't think so.
You reckon
Yeah.
Emery's going to have a bottle to say you're not
Yeah,
playing?
I
yeah.
said that from day
Yeah.
one. He won't play again.
Yeah, seriously.
We'll see.
So.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point because I mean, it's when that Crystal Palace game was a massive flashpoint, and obviously there was a lot of hatred in the moment. But as you're right, the fans have got to be heartbroken for it to be.
Yeah, exactly.
to be
Yeah,
such
like a
big
Van
deal.
Persie.
Yeah, yeah.
For me, Ashley Cole. You know, obviously Nasri was just a real sort of annoying player, basically.
Yeah, most of those.
An annoying
Yeah,
character.
but the four players you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Granit Xhaka hasn't betrayed Arsenal per se.
We'd be glad to see the back of him, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right, Tato, mate. There's your cab for
There'd
us.
probably be a bit of joy there if nothing else. But I don't think he deserves to be sort of vilified in that respect. But people are going to have a go at him and have a go at him. But don't boo him when he's at Arsenal, because we've never booed a player in a long time, basically.
But people around us weren't booing. It was just full subtext that was quite loud.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
exactly.
I think that was the case with the social media abuse as well. It was a small minority, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And another player that could be off in January, but Arsenal fans won't be as pleased about this, is Torreira. Obviously, his agent this week has come out and said he's unhappy with the role that Emery's playing him in. He said he loves the club and he's happy with the club, but he's unhappy with the role, and he's going to grow more and more frustrated if Emery keeps playing him in that position, and he's going to have to move on to play his football.
Yeah.
So
it's mind blowing. It's literally mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's a sad state of affairs, isn't it?
Do you know what? You look at holding midfielders.
This isn't the first rant of Dan's about Torreira.
Do you know what? This situation annoys more than anything, because Emery has one of the best holding midfielders in the league at his disposal, bar Kante and Ndidi at Leicester. I can't think of anyone better in a holding midfield position than Lucas Torreira. I mean, the job he does, he sweeps up and he just puts out fires, basically, and that's exactly what Arsenal needed. And last season, when he was really on form, we were all saying, do you know what, this is the player that Arsenal needed for so long. So why play him further forward? It just blows my mind.
Yeah.
We're going over certain amounts of old ground.
You don't need to put your hand up, Glen.
Sorry. Well, excuse me. When I watched him in the World Cup, I was in the pub. People were saying, "Who's that?" I was going, "He's our signing. We've got him.
Yeah.
We're going to see him next season." I was so proud. I thought, we have really bought a diamond here.
Yeah.
His initial games and that, I thought immediately we've got the makings of a folk hero. You know, you can just sense something about a certain player, can't you? He looked great, and then he's gradually been sort of like, I don't know, whittled down to something that he's not, which is really, really depressing. If he left, I'd be very, very, very sad, because
so much unfulfilled
there's so
potential.
much
He's
potential
23.
there.
Yeah,
I saw him.
You've got to think of the
Someone's
age
going to
thing,
be around
yeah.
for years.
Yeah.
He is an absolute victim of circumstance of
Yeah.
formation play.
Yeah, agree,
He
completely agree.
encapsulated the entire problem
Yeah.
with Emery's management of
Well,
Arsenal.
Serge was having a word about formations earlier, wasn't
Yeah, I've got the numbers here. So
You got notes?
I've
So
actually
Serge
copied
is-
the notes.
Serge's got notes this
Glen.
week. Blimey.
No notes from Glen.
He
Serge
hasn't
has
talked to
them.
me, but he's written
can't
them.
be
Glen-
right.
Is that
Glen's
your
notes
writing?
have been
It
bumped
is.
down the running
It's better
order.
than your
It's
writing.
very, I was going to say, it's very elegant, that, right?
Yeah, well, I was saying,
Joined up writing. I
Emery's
can't
played
do
9
joined up.
different formations.
You can't write,
I
Glen.
can't.
9 formations, 34 different starters, with everyone playing different roles every time. Since just started last season, so in 75 games he's been in charge of Arsenal, we've had 9
That's actually a really
formations
good
in the
stat.
league.
Yeah.
That's mental.
That is
That's
not-
utterly mental. With 35
Yeah.
different starting 11s, with ultimately, I think everyone else around the table would probably name the same starting 11.
Well, he's not played the same starting 11 in consecutive games since Cardiff and West Ham at the start of last season, which were literally his 4th and 5th games
I did
in
that
charge.
Cardiff game. He won 3-2, didn't he?
He's
Was it 2 or
and
3?
this-
3-2. Aubameyang
Yeah,
scored the
yeah,
winner.
yeah.
No,
This season-
Lacazette scored the winner.
this
Sorry,
season-
but yeah, he's
so
not
bad.
played the
Bonkers
same
game.
team
We
in
haven't had
consecutive
any-
games.
This season we haven't had any of the same formations of the same starting 11. It's mental.
Because he's run out of ideas.
Yeah.
He's literally run out of
He's
ideas.
worked out that playing a 4-2-3-1, which you love to do at Valencia, Seville, and Moscow,
Yeah.
hasn't worked here really.
Yeah. He's
So
gone back to 3 now, hasn't he?
Yeah. So now he's constantly changing his mind. He doesn't know what his starting centre backs are. He doesn't know if he wants a DM there or up front. I mean, the first podcast we did after the Spurs game, he played Xhaka, Guendouzi, and Torreira, and that didn't really work either.
Where's the
Yeah.
creativity?
Exactly.
I mean, sorry, no, Lucas Torreira's an attacking midfielder. I forgot. Sorry, sorry.
But that's the problem. Torreira is a classic victim of the circumstance of Emery's
Totally
indecision.
agree with you, Serge.
And also, the other thing you have to take in mind with a little pinch of salt is it's an Italian agent, and they're always quite keen to get a new deal and money out,
Yeah.
and to try and force a
Yeah.
new deal out. So
You
there's
can
always
But
that
what,
to
what
take
is
it out.
slightly concerning is the fact that obviously his manager at Sampdoria is now manager at AC Milan.
Yeah.
And they're talking about him going to AC
But
Milan.
AC Milan
aren't
are also 16th in the table.
I was going to
they?
say, if you looked
and
at Serie A,
who's the CEO of
a certain Ivan
yeah,
Gazidis.
exactly. Is there a connection there?
They're
Discuss.
doing really terribly, so I don't
Yeah.
think Torreira
They're
would
even
really
worse
want
than
to-
we are.
And
Yeah, well, say something.
And that says a lot.
Napoli, the other ones in from obviously, and they're also in absolute
Yeah, they're not doing
crisis.
well.
Yeah.
They're,
Especially
they're,
after last
they're
season.
suing their own
Yes.
squad. I mean,
So,
wait until we get to that level.
Yeah.
I think Torreira is probably going to be happier at Arsenal under a different management force,
Yeah.
or at least a little bit more stability. In
It's
the
a shame,
team.
though.
If there was
Yeah, of
stability, Torreira would be happy and
Yeah,
would
he would.
stay. So I think if we play the same formation and him actually playing his role that he's actually a player of, he would probably be quite happy and
But-
probably show dividends in terms of his performance.
He's just
We all know-
frustrated, isn't he?
Yeah.
For the manager's
I think we'd all be
decision.
frustrated if every week we went to work and went, actually, no, you're over here this week.
Yeah, not doing what you know you're best at.
You
Yeah.
know, if,
what-
if you work in a shop that goes, oh no, you're in lingerie.
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
You remember what?
Sorry, what's
Shoes.
that?
You know you said that loud.
Yeah, it was like, but I work in shoes. It's like, well, yeah, no, different places.
So you'll be in lingerie next week.
You
then?
know what I
So
mean?
is
It's
that
just like
right?
you just change every week. You can't work under those conditions.
Yeah, yeah,
So no
completely
wonder he's
agree,
like,
yeah,
he wants a transfer.
Yeah, or at least his agent, like you say, is putting
Yeah.
sort of waves out there.
I mean, you can
basically,
tell
see
he's
what
obviously
happens.
he has come from a hot country as well, and in England.
Well,
freezing
but this is the one thing I would
He
say.
did have a moment in the
Uruguay's not
summer
that
about
hot, mate. It rains a lot.
You've been there recently.
No?
Well, so this,
Fray
this,
Bentles.
this,
I
is,
do like
this
corned
is the
beef,
one
though.
thing. This is the one thing you can argue. Fray Bentles. That Layth, we spoke to him before the Europa League final, didn't
Yeah,
we?
yeah.
And Torreira doesn't really have a grasp of English, and from what I understood from what he was saying, that he doesn't really like England that much, which may be playing on his decision. But obviously, you know, a player in his situation, being played out of his position, not starting games when he should be in the team every week, it'd be the first name on the team sheet for me.
It's been a long run.
You can understand why he's frustrated, but I do think his inability to adapt, and you can't blame him for that because we've seen so many players in the past, quality players who failed to adapt, has not helped. But yeah, he has to play for me.
Yeah,
Has to play.
and if he was playing well, I think the secondary issues off the pitch might melt away to a certain extent
But
because he's happy.
He needs
in
some
his
help.
work.
Yeah,
He
of
needs
course,
help.
yeah.
He needs help to adapt, doesn't he? I mean,
Yeah, but I'm sure the club do a lot.
Well, we
for
spoke
players,
last week about the translator who was with Unai Emery,
Yeah.
and he's gone. I mean, what help are they giving to Torreira if they're not giving help to Unai Emery?
In terms of press conferences, that might be an
Yeah,
Emery
but
thing
in terms of the squad.
Well,
you know,
yeah, true.
But behind the scenes, they do help him out a lot in terms of settling and.
Also,
sort
bear
of-
in mind, there's
Yeah,
plenty of
fair-
Spanish speakers in
fairly
the
o-
squad.
Fairly open
so he's not
secret
alone.
that Emery didn't fancy him from the off. He didn't
Well, he
really
brought
want
him
to
in.
sign him.
No, I think that was
He was under his
I think
tenure.
that was a Sven Mislintat signing personally when he was still at the club.
Well, that was a good signing then.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you
Yeah.
look at
It
the
was a shame we
player.
lost him.
Obviously, Mislintat left in January, didn't he?
Yeah.
You look at the players brought in last summer. Bar Lichtsteiner, they've all been fairly successful. Leno, Socrates has been okay.
Yeah.
David Luiz.
That was this summer.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Mislintat signings?
Mislintat signings.
Yeah.
Leno been decent for us. Torreira been decent for us. Socrates
Leno's
been
been excellent.
okay. No, well, yeah, no, to
And
be
there's
fair.
still more to come as well.
I
Like
feel
Leno
sorry
as
for
well.
him. I really feel sorry for him. He's just
Who,
getting.
Leno?
He's getting.
Yeah, I
over,
agree.
He's supposed to be joining a top flight Premier League club, and he's getting tested more than blooming.
Yeah,
The Watford
but he's
keeper.
also he's been told by his boss basically to play a certain way. But if you haven't got any options and there's two
Yeah.
centre forwards bearing
But also
down
that-
you, what have you got to do? You've got to play it along, haven't you? Or else you're in a world of
What I'm
trouble.
saying in very
And it's almost like he
simple
feels
terms-
guilty by doing that
Yeah.
because he's going against his manager's
I'm
wishes.
yeah, I understand about that playing after the bat. I'm talking about in very simple terms. I really don't think Leno expects to be tested as much during each game that he plays. He's all over the place.
Yeah.
He's making 20, 30 saves a game.
All right, we're back after the beer break. The North London derby was at the weekend, and Arsenal kept North London red. Dan and Layth, you were there.
Yeah.
What was your experience there? We've got a vlog out which you can click on somewhere up here. I've never get the side right, but
It's somewhere.
Yeah.
it's somewhere up there.
Honestly, yeah.
tell
It
us
was,
what it was like.
It was just a brilliant day. North London is red. I've been going to Spurs. I've been going to N17 for, since the early 80s, basically, to watch Arsenal teams there. And I've had a lot of games there and a lot of experiences, good and bad, there, inside and outside the ground, on and off the pitch. So any result against Spurs to beat them is absolutely fantastic. And it was just brilliant. It was brilliant for so many reasons, because I've covered Arsenal women for a few years now, and I've been at Bournemouth in the press box, and I've literally been there with some of the Arsenal media team and maybe Tim Stillman, and that's it. There's been no one else there. Obviously Maria and a few other sort of fans, real hardcore fans, have been there, and it's been so heartening to see the growth of women's football from really sort of humble beginnings. Having said that, Arsenal have always been at the forefront of women's football. Vic Akers, obviously, a lot of Arsenal fans will know who he is. If you don't know who he is, the most obvious thing is he wore shorts when it was freezing all the time. Absolute nails. Lovely bloke as well.
Kieran Tierney, basically.
The original
He's
Kieran
harder than
Tierney.
Kieran Tierney, I'll tell you that. But no, we interviewed Jill Armstrong the other week, Geordie Armstrong's daughter. She's absolutely wonderful, and she loves Vic Akers. Everyone who knows about Arsenal loves Vic Akers, basically. And he was the manager in the 80s. Arsenal were at the forefront of women's football for 30 years. And now we've got the sort of noisy neighbours who've sort of come up and, oh yeah, we're going to host a game at our new stadium in N17. Great, fantastic. 38,000, well done to everyone who's gone there. Fair play. With Spurs Arsenal, the women's game is growing all the time. It's going to get to a tipping point now when the media coverage is going to be so big, the money will come in, the wages will get bigger, there'll be superstars basically, and it's on the verge of that happening basically. So for the noisy neighbours to host the North London derby, the first ever North London derby in the women's top flight, fair play to them. But the fact is, we went there and we beat them. And we silenced 38,000 or 35,000 Spurs fans. There were 3,000 Arsenal fans in the away end. It was absolutely fantastic. Obviously, me and Dan were in the press box. I had a bit of a nose round at the third best stadium in North London, basically.
Go on, Barnet.
Yeah. Emirates Barnet, obviously, if you're wondering about the first two. But it's a decent stadium, and so it should be for if you spent £1.3 billion on it, basically. But at the same time, going back to the women's football, they were fantastic. They were a bit sluggish first half because obviously every Arsenal player, they're the champions as well, a lot of Arsenal players were on international duty. Leah Williamson, the Dutch contingent as well. They all came back. First half, Dan was there as well, obviously. We didn't play the best, but went in at half-time 0-0, and then sort of just kicked on from there, really. Second half, it was brilliant. Arsenal really just bossed the game. 2-0 showed the qualities, as you would expect from a team of champions, basically. We interviewed Joe Mountney after the game. Known Joe for a few years now. He's an absolute gentleman. Got so much respect for him. He's a rising star in terms of being a head coach, being a coach, but not just for the women's game, for football in general, basically.
Joe's fantastic.
Yeah, and I know you did a piece
amazing.
for the Isn't It Gazette today, didn't you? And
Well, I mean, I spoke about Luis Enrique on last week's podcast. I've changed my mind.
Different dossier.
A different dossier. No, I put together a piece today on Joe Mountney, and he's just, in terms of the way he was during the game and after the game, in terms of his tactics and the way he spoke in the presser and the way he sets out his team and the style he has, he's completely the opposite to Emre. And he's everything that Emre promised to be and isn't. He's fantastic. I mean, we've spoken to him a few times, haven't we? And he's such a lovely bloke, and he's a great manager. He plays such an attacking style of football that just gets you off your seat. You're excited. You want to watch it.
Yeah.
He's got some superb players like Kim Little, who I thought yesterday was fantastic.
she took a goal really
Vivian
well,
Miedemar, of course, who's the best striker in the women's game at the moment.
yeah, in the world, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, of course, yeah. There's got so many good players, and the way he plays football just gets you excited. You just want to watch it. I didn't want the game to end yesterday.
Yeah.
I couldn't get enough of it. I thought they were fantastic, especially in that second half.
Absolutely.
I mean, first half they were a bit off the pace. You can forgive them that. A lot of players away on international duty, but they were superb.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and to be fair, you asked quite a good interesting question about Leah Williamson. And just purely in terms of positioning first, because and that was another thing you talk about, Joe Mills. He will answer a question honestly. He'll answer a question.
Point.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. He'll give you an interesting answer, give you an honest answer, and he'll give you an answer laced with a lot of technical stuff as well. But it'll be sort of penetrable, basically. You'll be able to understand it.
Yeah.
And he was basically saying that Leah Williamson, I see her more as a ball-playing centre-half or a defender, basically, rather than a defensive midfielder. I mean, what was your take on that?
Well, first, positionally, I mean, she played centre-half yesterday. She was absolutely superb.
Yeah.
It was the best centre-half performance I've seen at any level of football. I've watched a lot of football this season, from Premier League down to non-league, the women's game, League 2, whatever. I've seen so many levels. That was the best centre-half performance I've seen in a long time.
She was class, wasn't she?
Playing out from the back, she'd get the ball. Well, Arsenal can do it. Just the women.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Watching Arsenal
honestly,
play well, playing out from the back.
Yeah, she'd get the ball.
Joyful.
She'd get the ball. She'd get it out of her feet. She'd go forward. She'd have someone like Leah Wrighty, who was the holding midfielder. She'd have her in the gap to find, or she'd have Jordan Nobbs, Kim Little further forward. The fullbacks, Katie McCabe, Lisa Evans, they were superb as well. She'd always have an option, but she'd find the pass to the feet, and she'd get the team moving forward. And defensively, she was fantastic.
Yeah.
There were so many times where Tottenham tried to get in behind, and she was aware of the situation.
She read the game well, didn't she?
She was tracking the runner. The moment that her highlight, the biggest highlight for me, it was plenty. She was superb, but it was in the first half when I think it was Kit Graham who was running through, Tottenham striker, and she looked like she wasn't going to get there, and all of a sudden she just slid in, hooked the ball away.
Yeah.
It was a tackle that you'd see from the likes of Maldini.
Yeah.
It was superb. It was fantastic, and as well, she's a brilliant, talented footballer, but she's an Arsenal fan. She's been with the club since the age of 9. She's Arsenal through and through.
Yeah, is it 4 or 5 generations have been a Gooner, basically.
Yeah, her family and herself are Arsenal through and through. They bleed red and white.
Yeah.
And she's the kind of player that you want to see playing for Arsenal because she just loves the club.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she'll play for the club, not herself. As Tony Adams once said, you play for the name on the front, not the name on the back.
Yeah.
And she epitomises that for me.
Yeah,
she was
absolutely.
fantastic. I can't give her enough praise.
Yeah, I've interviewed her at London Colney previously, and you just see her love of the Arsenal just shines through, basically, on the top of being an absolutely fantastic player. She's young as well. She's got a lot more to come as well.
Yeah.
And she's
She's only
humble,
22.
she's grounded. Yeah, exactly, yeah. I'm really excited about watching her. Every time I watch her, I study the way she plays, and it's just absolutely fantastic. And you're right, she was so calm yesterday as well, under a lot of pressure from Spurs, especially first half when they're trying to press.
Can we talk about Kim Little as well? I mean, we've mentioned captains in this captains. It was a captain's display, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Arsenal were struggling a bit. They needed the opening goal, and there was obviously when she scored the moment, it just fell to her on the edge of the box, touch on the chest, a little bit of a shimmy onto her left foot, bottom corner, quick as you like, easy.
Glorious.
And she led the team from the front, didn't she? Especially in that second half, she just drove at people and with real purpose. She made it look so easy.
Yeah.
She's honestly a real joy to watch, and if people haven't been to watch Arsenal women, they should.
Yeah, you're missing out if you're not.
You
Go and
really
watch them. And that was one of my questions to Joe Mountney as well. It was a bit, it was slightly mischievous, but you've got to ask it if you're a journalist. And I was back in the press box yesterday, although obviously
back on the dark side.
Yeah, back on the dark side. Yeah, it's just being a fan, but not just being a fan. Oh, so you know, basically. Show us your shorthand, mate. I'm a qualified journalist. But anyway, my question to Joe, or one of my questions to Joe.
I might ask you to show me yours, to be honest.
Yeah. In other words, he blagged it.
Yeah. Don't show us your medals, show us your shorthand. But one of my questions to Joe was, do you think it's time that Arsenal host a game? And to be fair, Joe knows the score. He's an experienced guy, and he played a dead back start with a little glint in his eye. He goes, mate, because he's obviously Australian, I'm not sure.
Go on. You've got to run with it now.
I'm Serbian, but the Australian theme.
Mate.
He goes, mate, we do host games. And I go, yeah, at Boreham Wood, but obviously at the Emirates. And then a little twinkle in his eye, and he goes, and he just, to be fair, like he knew that was a bit of a loaded question, and he played a complete dead bat on it. As opposed to going back to Emery. What would have Emery said with that? He would have just been completely disjointed. There wouldn't have been any sort of coherent answer, basically. And it's not so much. It's not so much in terms of the fact you can't speak English properly. It's the fact that you said that you read an interview with him in Marca, and in the Spanish translation, it was still really banal and a bit disjointed. And that's in his natural language. So we're not going to just kick Emery for the sake of it. But at the same time, Joe Mountney was he knew the game. He was a really savvy, streetwise guy. He's a really engaging guy, really articulate guy, really intelligent guy, and a really good head coach, basically.
To him.
But absolutely,
I could listen to him all day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, look at what he said. I mean, he was asked.
Was I talking to him? I can't remember. The noise is drowned out.
I apologise.
No, sorry.
But I mean, look at
I like you, Glen.
Look at what he said yesterday. Obviously, Arsenal were a top side. If you look at some of the teams in Europe, and he was asked about the Champions League, he was asked about Lyon. And Lyon are the best side in the women's game. That's undisputed. They've won, I think, 3 Champions Leagues in a row. They're completely dominant. They've got some of the best players in the world. And he said, well, I'm happy to face Lyon. It's the game I want. He was asked about Sam Kerr, who Australian striker. She's one of the best in the game. She's gone to Chelsea last week. And the question was loaded slightly. I think there was sort of student journalists there. Was he scared?
Which is great. And they were like, "Are you scared about the fact that Chelsea have signed this great player?" And he was bullish without being arrogant or aggressive or rude or full of himself. He just goes, "No, why are we scared? We're Arsenal, basically. She's a great player, but we've got great players as well."
He said, "I'm not scared, and you shouldn't be scared."
Yeah.
We've got class players, and they have. They've got the best striker in the world. They've got 2 of the best central midfielders in the world. They've got a centre back in Leah Williamson, who we talked about, who's going to be one of the best players in the world.
And Jordan Nobbs when she comes back.
And then obviously had a little joke with you as well, didn't he?
Yeah. It was quite random. But you go in the new sort of Spurs ground, and you've got the sort of conference room. It's not as good as Arsenal.
It's an auditorium, as they brand it.
It's pretty decent, to be fair. But then
the trophy room.
I didn't see the trophy room.
No, there wasn't one of those, unfortunately. No.
But you sort of go in, and it's pretty decent, to be fair to them. And they've got a good setup there. We know the sort of press guys and stuff, and they're all really good people, really professional. But you go in there, and you're like, okay, this is all right. And then we sat in the front row. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's a few sort of big names there, but there's a lot of sort of people who are just covering the game, and so it should be. And that's the way
it gets people into journalism as well as into women's football.
Absolutely, yeah. And there was, I've got to say, there was a group of student journalists there as well. My former course tutor when I was doing something in journalism, she messaged me and said, "Oh yeah, there's a big group of the sort of guys and girls there who are there, sort of, you know, as student journalists trying to learn the trade and everything." So they were there, which is great. Yeah. It's all about sort of, you know, just pushing the game further forward. But as I say, we were sat in the front row. Joe comes out. You know, so I've done press conferences for the Champions League, you know, England games, all the rest of it. I've asked questions everywhere basically. So I wasn't going to like let anyone just jump in after Sky basically did their questions basically. So yeah, going back to what I was saying, like, you know, obviously asked Joe about, do you think Arsenal should play at the Emirates basically, and he gave a dead bat answer. Further down the line, cut a long story short, Dan then asked Joe about Leah Williamson and a supplementary question about Leah Williamson being a proper Gooner and how would she feel about beating the old enemy, you know, the North London rivals. And he looked at us, a little glint in his eye again, and he goes, "Mate, why don't you ask the mate next to you?" Meaning like me. And I was just like, I felt 10 foot tall. You know, you go in, you're a professional as a journalist, but at the same time, I love the fact he recognised the fact that, you know, I've watched Arsenal for 40 years, and that's a personal touch that he brings to everything that he does in terms of his dealings with the girls and the women and the women's game basically, and his role as head coach, because he loves the Arsenal.
Yeah. And I bet he said it in an Australian accent.
as opposed to nonsense I was just saying. But
we've got to get a Layth's accent corner a bit more often.
Well, do you know what? I'm going to suggest something. So obviously you asked him about if they should host games at the Emirates, and he said, you know, we have 3,000 fans at the new White Hart Lane, and we want to see the new faces at Meadow Park more. Yeah. On Sunday, they have a game against Liverpool at Meadow Park, and we're having a Gooner Fanzine day out to Meadow Park.
I quite like that. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah,
Sunday.
Southampton Saturday. Let's do Southampton.
Liverpool Sunday.
Love it. Yeah. Brilliant.
There you go.
Liverpool lost.
They're bottom of the league, so we should beat them.
Fantastic. Yeah, and just obviously, we're massive supporters of the women's game and Arsenal women, and you know, we will do as much as we can. We've done a lot so far, and we will keep doing it, and we'll go to games and the rest of it. Just a word on the new ground as well. The new ground in N17 that cost 1.3 billion. It's pretty decent. Like, yeah, but
Poor you.
Thanks for that. But you know, I've actually flown over. I can't remember where I was coming back from, but I flew over.
Not Portugal.
No, it wasn't Portugal. No. Yeah. I flew over. There's a little dig about the Victoria game. We were going to go,
and we will continue.
But it does actually look like a toilet seat, to be fair.
It does.
It really does.
Did you have a poo as you flew over? So it was jettisoned down. Sorry,
Glen.
Well, come on.
Honestly. Anyway, moving swiftly on. My point was, it's a decent ground, and so it should be. But I remember being outside that away end for so many years, decades basically. And I remember standing there yesterday, and it was just completely different. We could all tell stories about what it was like coming out of that old away end at White Hart Lane. And I stood there yesterday, and I literally just stood there. Like, I met Dan inside, a couple of other people I sort of met and stuff, but I was by myself at that point, and I literally just stood there for 30 seconds, just remembering what it was like and what it's like now. And it will be interesting for the Premier League game, but at the same time,
it'll be the same, mate, as it was.
What, yesterday?
No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it will be interesting, and everyone's going, Spurs have moved on and they've got this great new stadium. Let's see what it's like when Arsenal go there in March or wherever it is, and then we'll talk about what it's like anyway. Because everyone goes, it's a really great shiny stadium, and it is. But let's see if they got that away and sorted.
Do you know what?
I'd like to see.
You mentioned the away end now. I really do have to praise the Arsenal fans. Yes, I know we've touched on it, but they were absolutely superb.
Yeah.
There was 38,000 people there. 3,000 of them were Arsenal fans. But you heard Arsenal throughout, didn't you? You Arsenal were the ones singing throughout.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were fantastic.
Big shout out to Jake Core as well.
Yeah, Jake Core, of course. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it was special at the end, wasn't it? When the Arsenal players came over and they were all holding hands and they were, waving their arms in the air, celebrating. Joe Mountney went round. He was, applauding the fans and congratulating every single one of them players.
It was just great.
It was a moment that you want to see, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and the Arsenal fans vocal throughout. They really, drove the team on. And I think without them, Arsenal wouldn't have won that game. They were fantastic.
Yeah.
That's what
there was a special moment at the end where Kate McCabe was handing over her boots to a young fan. That's what you want to see from football, isn't it? Absolutely, you want those feel-good moments. So well done to all the Arsenal fans.
Absolutely. And I've got 3 kids myself, and I've got 2 daughters, and I take all 3 of them down to Boreham Wood to watch the Arsenal women. And just a word on the girls, because they're amazing. They will always sign autographs. They'll always have a word for everyone. They're completely humble, despite being world-class players. Some of them as well. Certainly international players, Premier League players, top quality players. It's just a really good atmosphere. It's a really good bond there. So if you're an Arsenal fan, get down and watch them at Boreham Wood, and then we're gonna keep pushing for Arsenal to play at the Emirates, basically. Arsenal women to play at the Emirates because they deserve to, basically.
Yeah, they
and
do.
And to be fair, Joe Moore, he was like, well, we need to sell at Boreham Wood first, but there's no guarantee. You sell at Boreham Wood, what's it, 4,500?
6,000.
Yeah.
It's not 6,000. It's less than that. But basically, it's 4,500, 5,000.
That's what he said. But
No, it's not 6,000. It's 4,500.
oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So basically,
having words
if
later.
they sell that out, does that automatically translate to 40,000?
Well,
Emirates, and equally on the flip side of that is, if they only get 2,500, why can't they get 50,000 at the Emirates?
I mean, we talked about.
So it's not about we need to get to targets before we go to the Emirates.
Yeah.
Do it now.
Can I ask,
just
how much-
literally, just schedule a game before the end of the season and go, we're going to do it,
Yeah.
and then build it up, get the media out there, get Arsenal
I mean,
to
the
sell it.
reverse
and
fixture
and
is the
we can
perfect
get
chance, isn't it?
50,000. The reverse fixture,
What's the
absolutely.
How much were they
ticket price?
charging yesterday?
£6.
Yesterday,
£6 for the away edge, yes.
Well, let's put it this way: they obviously played there
Cheaper
during the
than a
Emirates
triple
Cup.
Yeah, I know.
They obviously played there during the Emirates Cup, didn't they? And I mean,
Yeah.
we talked about it in the video,
Yeah.
and we said, they maybe didn't have the support that they wanted.
Yeah, I don't know
But-
if double headers work.
but-
I think they should schedule a women's game
Yeah, but hang
on
on.
a Sunday. Say Arsenal play on a Saturday, or if they're playing away, schedule a women's game there. Don't do a double
Yeah,
header.
but hang on, what do you think the attendance was for the Emirates Cup?
I have no idea. I can't remember.
It was 20,000.
Okay, well,
Well, there you go then.
but how much of that 20,000 was watching the Bayern Munich game? How much stayed for the Lyon game?
Well, still, there was 20,000 people in the ground when the women were playing, and that was the peak
But there
attendance.
wasn't though, was there? Because that was the early game, and me, who's watched
No,
the Arsenal win
like,
for a long
you
time,
can go back
I
and
didn't
look, I'm
actually.
telling you.
I didn't actually go into the Lyon game, and that's absolutely scandalous. But
I
to be fair,
was there for both and
to
just
be,
went out there.
to be fair, I was in the pub, so yeah, it was a summer. And all
I
the
mean,
rest
I
of
was
it.
there for both still.
But equally, I don't know if double headers will work. Not for a North London derby.
Yeah.
Just play the game on a Sunday when Arsenal ain't playing, and I guarantee if they do it properly and they market it properly and the interest
Yeah.
is there, there'll be 50,000. Everyone's going Spurs have done well getting 38,000. Arsenal will get another 10,000 on top of that.
It's a good idea during the international break.
Yeah,
Fair
do it
work.
in
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't remember when the actual
It was
fixture
record
is.
break. It wasn't just. I mean, I know they had an amazing crowd down at White Hart Lane, but or whatever it's called.
It doesn't have a name.
I just called it the new ground in
So all
17.
sorts of records were broken yesterday.
I think it's
It was
called the
yeah, yeah, 'cause
Tottenham
Liverpool played
Hotspur
Everton as
Stadium,
well,
isn't
didn't
it?
they?
It's
Yeah,
women's
yeah.
football game in the Super
Wait,
League.
Chelsea beat United, I
It,
believe.
Yeah,
it was.
yeah,
It was.
absolutely.
I think the record's been broken 5 times this calendar year, and the first record broken was 5,000, and now they're up to 38,000.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the
Because
growth.
Stamford Bridge has hosted a game. The London
Yeah,
Stadium's hosted
of
a game.
course,
Obviously,
yeah.
Spurs have now. There's
I
no
mean,
reason
Spurs,
why
I think
Arsenal
Spurs
can't
are
do
playing
it.
both of those games.
Yeah, well,
So still,
yeah.
we don't care about Spurs
Yeah,
as well.
but Arsenal can break. Arsenal get more than 38,000 by far.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, no, really enjoyed your chat on that, and I really enjoyed the content as well. But moving the conversation on to another topic, Thierry Henry has gone to Montreal Impact as a boss. Obviously, disastrous campaign at Monaco to start his managerial career. I did a piece for the Mail Online actually the other day where he was linked with the Barcelona job last season, which would have been a very strange appointment. But tell you haven't read it, mate. No.
You've just been mugged.
But yeah, I mean, what do you think about Henry going to Montreal?
Good luck to him.
How do you think
Yeah,
he's going to
agree,
do?
yeah.
Absolutely.
Good
Yeah.
luck to him. I think it's he needs to sort of dust himself off after what was a disastrous campaign at Monaco.
Yeah.
I mean, but Montreal Impact is a lower quality of football, so it should be a bit easier for him to get involved. I mean, it's not even a question. It's
No, I
much
know.
lower than any other league.
So you're just going through the football dictionary. M-O-N, M-O-N, Surreal.
MLS. He's on the M's at the moment.
Well, I'm surprised he missed out Mönchengladbach. Xhaka.
Maybe that's afterwards. Yeah.
Technically begins with a B.
But yeah, no, for me, I mean, it got me searching Canadian friends in my phone book. Basically, I'm definitely going to go over there and watch him. I love Henry. For
You might
me,
not
he
be
was.
there by the time you get
Well, yeah. I'm talking about next year, so maybe not. But yeah, basically, for me, he was the best striker I've ever seen at Arsenal.
Without
basically.
doubt, without
But
doubt.
you're obviously talking Bergkamp. Bergkamp, I see as more of a sort of.
Attacking
He
midfielder,
wasn't.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't a striker per se.
Sort of a Torreira position these days.
All
exactly,
topical.
Yeah. But I love Ian Wright. Ian Wright's up there, but Henry was the best player in terms of being a striker I've ever seen at the Arsenal, basically. And I always wish him well. Whatever he does, I want him to do well. Obviously, if he came up against Arsenal when he managed Monaco, you know, you'd be like, yeah, we obviously want Arsenal to win, but apart from that, I want him to do really well. I think he could be a really good manager, but he wasn't particularly good at Monaco.
Yeah, but no,
There was a lot of issues going on there, obviously.
Yeah,
but at the
there's
same
a lot of
time,
The thing with
It's just one of
Monaco
these players
is-
not cut out for
well, yeah, they say that, don't they? If you're a really good player, sometimes it's hard to translate, you know, what you want to the players
his
because you can't
assistant
understand how
job
they
at
don't
Belgium
understand.
was you know,
He done well there, didn't he?
He did well there.
Yeah,
He got to work with Divock Origi and Lukaku in terms of helping their striking ability, which has worked, obviously.
Yeah.
So he has got the
Good
ability
point.
for a coaching treatment. So
Yeah.
let's see how he does in the MLS.
The thing with Monaco is, for me, it was almost set up to fail. I mean, he took over Monaco when they were in the bottom 3.
But he's not going to get the job if they're champions, though, is he?
Well, no, but what do you? Well, you've got a squad who are low on confidence. You've not got
But that's
experience.
when you show your mettle, isn't it? You're not going to get a job if you just won a championship.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, it wasn't a situation that was really kind of helpful for him, was it? With Montreal, it's almost a fresh start.
Do we know how have they been doing? Does anyone know?
Toby,
Their season starts February. Last season,
How did they do last year, though?
I think they finished 12th in
they split it into
not
2
many.
conferences, don't
yeah.
they? So it's East and West.
As a playoff.
But he's got a former teammate, hasn't he? Bakary Sagna's there.
Yeah.
Bakary Sagna, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, he's obviously in the twilight of his career, but he's still
who
someone
was you
with
saying
experience.
was it Bojan was there as well?
Bojan from
Bojan, yeah,
Stoke
yeah.
played for Barcelona.
Yeah,
of
I
course.
saw him play when he was at Barcelona. I saw him in Nou Camp, and he was sort of hailed as the next Messi, and he's obviously his career's meandered into a
He was good
cul-de-sac,
at
but at the
Stoke
same
for a bit, wasn't
time,
he?
It was okay at Stoke.
yeah,
We
not
didn't
really.
get the
I
amount
hate
of game
Stoke.
time.
He had a good
I'd never
season.
admit Stoke have done anything good. He was terrible at Stoke,
But-
just like they're all terrible.
think
And I hope they get relegated to the 3rd tier.
Got Alan
All
Hudson
tier,
on
Especially you, Ryan
yeah,
Shawcross.
but honestly, yeah, but that's coming from fans' point of
But
view.
the introduction of Henry into the MLS is obviously quite a good PR stunt for them because after Zlatan's,
Well, he's been there before,
after
hasn't he?
Zlatan's comments when he left LA,
Oh, they were great though, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were funny. But
I
he said,
actually-
go back to watching baseball now.
Yeah.
So I think MLS probably made a decision. They need to get a big name back in to get
I've
the
just
fans
remembered
out.
actually, he was at New York Red Bulls, wasn't he?
He
Red
was,
Bull,
yeah.
whatever. And I took my kids, all 3 of my kids, when Arsenal played him at the Emirates Cup, at the end, I can't even remember what year it was. I took them all because Henry played for him. I was like, I want you to see Henry at the Arsenal, basically. I can't remember what the score
Did you
was.
take him to Leeds in the FA Cup?
No, but I was at that game. That game
what a
at
moment that
Highbury.
was.
When he came off the
Highbury.
when he
at
came off
Emirates.
the Shamak.
That was one of the, I've probably seen I've seen more than 1,500 games for Arsenal in nearly 40 years. And that was one of the most emotional moments I've ever had being an Arsenal fan when he scored that late winner against Leeds when he came back in 2011. It was
Goosebumps.
absolutely
I
amazing.
remember watching it.
Seriously.
I remember watching it on TV.
And the Sunderland goal, yeah. And what
Yeah,
really
of course,
annoyed me, there was before that Sunderland goal, that
I've heard.
last goal he scored for Arsenal, which should have brought him on to 229 goals, because the
Blackburn
week before we beat Blackburn 7-1, and he scored a perfectly good goal.
It was
and
his goal.
And the FA sort of dubious goals committee took the goal off him, and I took my kids to that game as well, just so they could see him. And I really wanted them to say they've seen Henry score a goal, and they took the goal off him. I've never forgiven the dubious goals committee for that.
Do you know what
Basically. So he's stuck on 228.
Dear dubious goals committee.
Yeah.
We'd like to write a written complaint.
Absolutely.
So you
That
mentioned.
goal up to Sunderland was Arsenal. Came on the
It was,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Sorry.
Joey, you mentioned that Leeds goal. I mean, in the past, kind of, however, probably decade, have there been any? Obviously, the FA Cup finals have been great. But have there been any better Arsenal moments?
That was.
I remember watching it. I wasn't there. I
Pure
wasn't there at the
buzz.
ground, but I remember watching it at
Talking
home.
about the Emirates.
I mean, in the past decade. I mean, I remember watching it at home, and it obviously came on as a sub.
Barcelona game.
I was still fair. I was still probably what.
Henry's header against United when he'd been.
Yeah.
It's been.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be up there with the best
That was
moments.
the season he left,
Roof
wasn't it?
came
Yeah.
off
Yeah,
that.
100%.
Yeah.
But do you know what? There was. I remember watching it at home. I wasn't out of the ground. I was probably 15, 16, whatever. Watching it at home. My mum,
Trying to get
when
in the press
he came on, yeah, well, I'm there now, Glen. It's right.
Singing the sound of the
He came on.
Did you have a beard then?
Yeah, I've always had a beard since birth.
He's still really loud as well.
Yeah. It's
And
not-
interrupted and talking over
baby
people.
beard.
It's not. It's
You could talk, fucking hell.
yeah. What are you on about? I remember when he came on, and my mum was watching the game with him, and she went, "He's not going to score." I went, "Yeah, he is. It's Terry Henry. Of course he's going to score." She went, "Nah, she's not."
That was the glory days
Of course he was going to score.
Imagine that, Henry substituted for Shamak. What
Funny-
a substitution that is.
Just before I forget, it's actually in my book there.
You've written a book?
I've written a couple actually, funny enough.
Oh,
but,
have you?
yeah.
Were you
I-
on TalkSport as well?
Funny you mention- I was actually on TalkSport last night talking about Arsenal, but
Really?
yeah, I don't like to talk about it, to be honest.
Were you
You're
the
a
challenge the
sham.
Emirates?
No,
You're a
Arsenal.
shambles.
Very good question, Glenn. Thanks for asking.
Who
I
were you
appreciate
talking
that.
to?
I was talking to Jonathan Ross's brother, Paul Ross, who's actually a really nice
Paul
guy.
Ross is a nice bloke.
Yeah.
Why are you
Danny
mugging him
Baker's
off as
best
Jonathan
man.
Ross's
Was he
brother?
really?
Yeah, I
I
believe
love random
so,
stats like that. But yeah, he was a lovely bloke. And we talked about Arsenal, and then he sort of asked me about Azerbaijan Wales, which is slightly challenging. But yeah, it was really good. But yeah, I
That's
don't
like
like
I'm a
talking
celebrity,
about
mate.
photos on the wall. I've no idea who he sports. Who's he sport?
I don't know.
No, yeah.
Not a quiz, just
Yeah,
ask.
yeah, he's a very experienced broadcaster. It was
Usual
good fun. But yeah, it's in Arsenal Wenger's 50 defining fixtures.
Available
that,
in all
Leeds
good
game.
discount
But-
bins.
It's actually on sale on the Gooner Fanzine website as well.
Available at all good second-hand shops.
Yeah.
and charity shops.
I'll give you. Do you know
Yeah, in a
what?
bargain bucket for a quid.
I'll give
Anyway.
you. I'll give you a signed free version if you want.
I'll just put my
Come to
thumbprint on it or
life,
something.
didn't
Not even signed by the author, signed
Well,
by
what-
Dan Mountney.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What we got next then? What's left?
But yeah, so also just to touch on, probably should touch on the international break. Obviously, 0 Arsenal players in the England squad. That's a talking point in
For the
itself.
men's team,
yeah, I mean,
Oxlade Chamberlain, former Arsenal player. He was man of the match. I thought he was brilliant. I thought he did so well. I interviewed him at London Colney a couple of years ago, and I remember watching his dad, Mark Chamberlain, play. It shows my age here, basically. You'd probably remember as well. He was a slope player, and he played for England. I remember he played for England when they beat Luxembourg 9-0. Luther Blissett got a hat-trick, but Mark Chamberlain, I'm sure he got a goal or two, and he was brilliant that night. But anyway, to cut a long story short, I was talking to Oxlade Chamberlain, his son, Junior, and he was basically... He was speaking really well, really good player, but I got a real sense that he didn't believe how good he could be, and he suffered from a slight lack of confidence, basically, in terms of believing he could be a great footballer. And he's obviously got that move to Liverpool. He had a really serious injury, but he's coming back now, and he's just I really.
Southgate loves him.
Yeah, and deservedly so. I love him. We were at the Liverpool game, the 5-0. Yeah, but we were at the Liverpool game, the 5-0, and I remember doing a tweet during the game, and there was a lot of other people doing it as well. But he was getting booed. Why on earth?
Ridiculous.
Can I just say, if you're an Arsenal fan, you're booing Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, you need to have a look at yourself, basically. You need to have a word with yourself. Why are you booing a player who's done nothing wrong for Arsenal?
You know you're in trouble when
all
Layth's
he did was
addressing the
try
camera
and play
directly.
for his club, and it didn't work out. He had injuries, didn't play well. He moved
Played
to
out
another
of position.
played out of position. He played in a struggling side at times. You know, and it didn't work out. That's football. You move on. If you're booing him, why are you booing him? Seriously, there was about 6,000 Arsenal fans up there. There was maybe 1,000 booing him, and you need to look at yourself because he's done nothing wrong. And good luck to him at Liverpool. And I thought he was the man in the match for England beating Kosovo 4-0 on Sunday.
he was also applauding the Arsenal fans.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
what-
absolutely. Yeah,
to
good
be
point,
fair,
yeah,
as much as Layth mentions that he was getting booed, I mean, there was a point. I did tweet because I was in the press box that day.
You're in the press box then?
Yeah,
Press
you
box
on TalkSport.
Straight in the press box in the shadows of Anfield.
Of course, yeah.
Can I just say I'll
But
be
he
on
did-
Sky tonight?
Well, I'm glad. I'm proud of you. But he obviously did get booed. But there was a moment when he went to take a corner in front of the away end. He did get applauded. It was a rather
Yeah, but
rather
you were sat in the
large
press
round
box.
of
We were in the
applause.
away end, and there was a lot of boos there.
But we
Was
made
there?
an
Yeah.
effort.
We-
to
I
roll
mean,
those,
we
seriously.
talked-
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
took
yeah,
a
we were sat
corner,
together.
we
We
made an
popped the
effort.
back of
Yeah,
it,
you were in that corner,
Yeah,
weren't you? We
absolutely, yeah.
talked about him in the video afterwards, and you do have to give him credit. You mentioned about the injuries that he had. He was in a failing side, and he had the balls to say, "Do you know what? I'm gonna make a move for the betterment of my
Yeah,
career."
he never slagged
And
Arsenal
you
off.
can't argue with
Someone
that. You
tweeted
can't-
me after that game and they said, "Oh yeah, the reason we're booing him because he wore a Liverpool shirt before he signed."
No, he
he
didn't.
didn't. He's not
No,
Paul
he didn't.
Ince.
That's
He's
nonsense.
here for United. He never did that. And it's amazing how these rumours and this nonsense starts on social media. He never wore a Liverpool shirt because if he did, I would be the first one on my seat giving him a stick, and he never did
I was
that.
at
He
that
gave-
game.
Seriously.
It was the game that he was signed. Well, he was obviously moving. But he played at Anfield for Arsenal.
I was in the press box for that day, Dan. The 4-0. We were dreadful that
He was
day.
substituted.
You've been in the press box. You're not mentioned
Wenger
it.
should never have picked him for
Well,
that game.
that was a
Because
bad
he knew he was
decision
going to
by
Liverpool,
Wenger.
yeah,
That
exactly.
really
yeah.
compromised.
Hung him out to dry.
compromised
Seriously,
him
yeah,
really
yeah.
bad.
That was a dreadful performance. It
Yeah,
wasn't
but he
just
was still
shots.
one of the better players that day, wasn't he?
There was no better players. That was one of the worst performances I've ever seen from
Well,
an
I mean,
Arsenal
well,
side.
everyone was
That was an
awful, but I
absolute
mean-
disgrace.
That was the game.
So
when I
far,
saw-
yeah. Emery's still in charge.
There's still worse to come.
We're still at Southampton this weekend.
I actually asked the question,
10
who's
mil.
that bloke with a beard coming down the right? It was Salah.
Oh,
He
God.
looks quite good.
Yeah.
He might be alright, him.
Yeah, I actually voted for Pete. I'm obviously in the Football Writers Association. I voted for Player of the Year. If we're going to pull rank
Big man.
Anyway, moving on.
To the original point of the bring up the England side and Arsenal not being in it. Obviously, what's Arsenal's options? So Joe Willock, Reece Nelson,
Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Oh,
Ainsley
sorry, no.
Ainsley Maitland-Niles.
Ainsley Maitland-Miles. Sorry. Rob Holding.
I'm really
Rob
tired.
Holding.
Apologise.
So I don't know over, yeah.
So there's a lot of Arsenal English youngsters that
Reece
are
Nelson,
and Reece Nelson and Xhaka getting overshadowed by Smith. You gonna keep going?
Eddie Nketiah.
We got loads.
Patrick Bamford
Exactly.
playing instead of him
There's
at
a
the
lot of
moment.
them getting overshadowed by other clubs' young talents, basically.
You can't deny with the club performance. I think,
Yeah, exactly.
Gareth Southgate's got to look at club performance
Yeah.
and the way they're being selected and played. At the moment, they're not playing good enough on a club level, so you can't select them for the national.
It's quite
level.
interesting because Emery's really given them a platform
He
since he's
has.
come in, and yet
But he's
now,
also put them in the wrong
now he's
positions,
putting them in the wrong
and
position.
other players around them in the wrong
Yeah.
positions, playing them poorly, not playing them enough, taking them off, sort of affecting their confidence, which is something that Glen mentioned in the previous podcast, sort of putting Willock and Saka off
Glad
at the
you
70th
listened to me.
minute. Sort of
Did you
doing
say
something
something?
like that.
What?
Their confidence isn't really sky high because
Yeah, yeah.
of the performance of the club. So, I mean, yeah, they've undoubtedly got the ability at some point, but I mean, Nketiah is not even playing for Leeds properly at the moment, which is
Why is that?
Yeah.
you have to ask
Because
Bielsa.
Patrick Bamford is the best centre forward the world has ever
What
seen.
does that say? It's slightly worrying.
He's a poor man's Danny Ings.
What, I'm not even a poor man's Danny Welbeck.
No, Danny Welbeck was an absolute hero.
Do you know what? Can I just
Well-
say regarding England? Obviously, Arsenal, they've not really got anyone in the squad at the moment who should deserve to be in the England squad.
Do you think?
But do you know what? If I see one more Tottenham fan say Harry Winks is better than Matteo Guendouzi, I'm going to lose my mind. They keep comparing them. Winks has got an extra 3 years of his career. Guendouzi has got more caps at international. I think. Well, I could be wrong, but apparently he's got more caps at international level.
Not under 21. He hasn't played for the first senior team.
Well,
yet.
still,
under
but
21s, under
he's
17s.
I saw him
further
play
forward
for-
in his development than Winks is. And if I see one more comparison, because Winks is a sideways player for me, he's the English Granit Xhaka.
Did you see his goal against Kosovo?
One
It was
good
such a bad. No, it was
Against
such
Kosovo.
a bad touch.
He was
It
set
was
up by
such
Oxford
a,
Chamberlain as well.
it was
to
a
be
heavy
fair.
touch.
Do you know what,
He
it-
didn't mean it at all. He didn't mean it at all.
If I see one more comparison between the two, I'm
No,
going to
no.
lose my mind. Because Guendouzi is streets ahead in terms of the quality and the ability he's got.
I remember,
he's
I remember
still-
doing a game at Peterborough a couple of years ago, and Guendouzi was playing for France under 18s against England under 18s.
Inside
Oh, you've
track.
not mentioned
And he
it, mate.
came on as sub, and he was only on the pitch for 20 minutes, and I was like, "Who is this player?"
So you always had that.
Is that David Luiz?
Yeah, he was like, I remember just thinking he was like Sideshow Bob out the Simpsons, but he was brilliant. He was brilliant that night, and he's
that
progressed.
was before,
And to be
yeah.
fair to Emery, he did pick him up from. Well, yeah,
Not
he was
really.
on a monitor because he was a PSG academy player. But
It was Mislintat.
yeah. Well, but obviously, Emery.
Either way.
To give Emery credit, he did know who Guendouzi was. You'd like to think so, anyway. But yeah, I've always followed his career from there, and he's done so well, and he's going to be a massive player for Arsenal.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Either way, I think we need to look at the Arsenal team first before we can even start saying they should play for England.
Yeah,
They-
exactly.
There's
yeah,
no one
yeah.
in there, is there?
No,
Yeah.
you need to
I don't
see the
want
team.
to
I
play
mean, Holding is the furthest along in terms of should be getting an England cap. But I
He's
mean,
nowhere near it, mate.
no, exactly.
Earlier this season, you could have said that Willock deserved a squad.
No,
cap.
under 21s.
Deserving
No,
it,
under 21s is where he needs to
deserving
be.
it and actually having it, two different things.
They-
I think the Arsenal team need to perform at a high standard for a consistent amount of time before you can even start
Yeah,
suggesting
I
they
agree.
deserve an England.
But they've
quite
got
packed
they've
midfield
got
as well, isn't
They've
it,
got no
England, yeah.
top-class English
Before they can
talents,
start
have they?
alongside Harry Winks against Kosovo.
Yeah, well, that's what.
Go
Yeah.
on, Harry Winks.
Anyway, you've got your notes again, haven't you? I want
Very
to see your
limited
notes.
notes.
Get them
Well,
out. Let's have a
Serge has
look.
done me. He's got 5
Honestly,
pages.
yeah.
Glen,
Well, look at that.
unfold the
Glen's-
notes.
These are
It's
facts.
not-
Unfold
there's
notes.
Facts and
Drum roll.
stats.
We do a drum roll on the video, seriously.
It's really nothing actually because.
Why are you writing in capital letters though? That's slightly
Because
silly.
I like.
When I was on local papers, people used to write me letters in
You made
capital
this joke
letters.
already, though,
and
yeah.
I was really scared when I used to do
Oh,
that.
made this joke
I've
2
been on
weeks ago.
Talksport.
Well, my pen was on caps lock. I know keyboards and all that. Don't worry about that.
Is that roasting the 21st century? Is that what you're trying to do?
I just got done by
Oh, yeah,
How's your Apple 11 anyway?
He's still on dial-up.
Apple 11, iPhone 11. I can't even
Right.
He made that joke.
Anyway,
2
I
weeks ago as well.
was going to fax this over to you, but you didn't get back to me.
So go on,
No,
what's
there's
on the
nothing.
list?
There's
What you got on
nothing.
the list? Go on, yeah.
No, you said a few things to think about. It's really not a lot. There's not a lot. You've
have you
talked
got?
about Emery
That's
and
great.
how you see the future and the club relationship with the players. The only thing at the Wolves game, I was outside a pub. It's like quite a sad little story. No, it's nothing.
Not
It's
too
just
sad,
nothing. No.
Grumpy
It was
Glen's
just,
sad corner.
And you get the violins there.
I was outside a pub. There was a guy with his son, okay, young son, and the players'
What,
coach.
Arsenal or Wolves?
No, the players' coach. Yeah, he was an Arsenal fan.
Right.
Players' coach pulled up, and the son quite excitedly said, "Oh, Dad, is that the players' coach?" And sort of like he was going, "Yes." And his dad said, "It's a pity the windows are tinted. You know, you can't actually see them." And at that moment, I thought, what a beautiful metaphor for the dichotomy and disconnect between the fans and the players.
It's true.
You know?
It's very
I know they
We've got a resident
they
DH
respect-
Lawrence over here.
I know they respect their privacy, yet they're all over sort of like liking certain tweets and stuff on social media, which is another storm that we'll probably talk about in another podcast.
When you get a smart.
Apart from that,
He
what
might-
else
he
have I
might
got?
say-
When you get a smartphone.
Yeah, I'll say I'm not getting one. Yeah, that's really, you know, there was stuff you said about the noise, you know, before it wasn't a statement, was it? What came before the statement?
A brief.
The briefing,
Yeah.
the briefing.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
About noise, you know, that just sort of goes back to, you know, thank you for your interest in our affairs.
Yeah.
You know?
Basically, yeah, you know, the Gooner Fanzine's been going since 1987, and if the powers that be at Arsenal think Arsenal fans' opinion is just noise, what does that say about the state of the club, basically?
Well, the only noise is in this book, which I've been speaking to Andy off camera.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to buy a copy. We used to be probably one of the wittiest sets of fans on the North Bank and in the Clock End in terms of songs, chants, just witty, just in a certain game. You know, just come up with one song you never hear again. I had a great chat with Andy. I'm going to buy this book and let's get inventive, millennials.
Okay, boomer.
Okay, very much.
Can we end on that, please? That was quality.
We got it in.
Before we forget,
Millennials are probably about 30 now, aren't they?
Lave's addressing the camera again.
addressing the camera on that bombshell. Before we forget, you know, the riders of the night at the Gunners pub on Saturday, after Southampton, 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday. They're down there from 6, 7 o'clock. It'd be a really good night. There'd be loads of Arsenal there, old school Arsenal, loyal fans. Get down if you can. It's for good cause as well. Great book. It'd be a really good laugh as well. So yeah, me and Glen are probably going to go to that. We'll have a few beers. Might get Dan
Saturday's a
along
big
as well.
one.
Yeah,
I'll be there too.
Serge will be there as well. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it. Get down if you can. Obviously buy the book as well. We've had a chat with Andy from Riders of the Night as well, and that's going to go out as a separate little piece. But yeah, just a little plug there before I forget. So,
Just wait until you hear Layth's singing voice.
yeah, before I forget, we had a bit of a Gooner social on Friday after interviewing Alan Smith, which is going to go out later this week.
You're an
Alan Smith was
embarrassment.
an absolute legend. It was really
You're an
good fun. We got him for a long time, and we talked about a lot of Arsenal stuff as well. So keep your eyes out for that. But we basically interviewed him in a hotel in St Albans. Went back to town I live in now. I'm from London, obviously originally, but I live in a place called Hitchin. We had a night out in Hitchin. There was a karaoke night, and for me, I think I'm a brilliant singer.
You're a disgrace.
And these lot are just
You're a
tone deaf,
disgrace.
basically. They were, you know, we might put a
I wish I was
karaoke
tone
film on.
Well, Elvis was turning in his grave. You're an embarrassment.
I love you too much, baby. Come on, why can't you see?
Tell us what your karaoke song is,
Madness.
because my song is Suspicious Minds by Elvis, and I think I absolutely ruled it that night. But
Well done.
that's a different story.
Toby,
If
Toby.
you
Anyway,
think this
I
is
digress.
if you
Toby-
think this is staying in, you're wrong.
Toby, could you see us out, my friend?
Yes. Thank
for
you
it.
very much for watching. Thoroughly enjoyed this chat, boys. Back next week for some more.
He hasn't ripped it up, he's thrown it away this week.
Oh, he's
No.
not.
Have you ripped it up?
Oh,
Good.
fine.
Yeah.
Serge gone.
Hey. You need them for next week. They're still relevant next week. Take them back together.
More of the
Every
same.
week.
Thanks very much for watching. Please comment below any of your thoughts on what we discussed, the women's football, international football, and the like. Please subscribe as well, really helps us. And press the like button if you enjoyed the video. Cheers.
Cheers.
I can't believe we just high-fived live on the podcast.
God.
Utter prattle at the end there. That was total bollocks. That was proper bollocks at the end.
Honestly, I say you just started to generate.
Yeah, it was obviously a fight.
Yeah, exactly.